Hey guys, it's Danny and
Miranda, we're back.
we are back, and today we are interviewing,
Bowery Mission
yes, and
in New York City.
yes. So they are a group that we haven't yet partnered with, but we plan on doing so, and we plan on doing a little trip there so we can check them out. Introduce yourself, and then introduce the charity, and then tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
I'm Hannah Vanbiber. I'm the Senior Manager of Volunteer Services for the Bowery Mission in New York City. So we work with the homeless population, or what we like to say, people experiencing homelessness, because it's a temporary thing for most people. So we offer services for people who are in crisis on the streets, like food, medical care, clothing, showers. So basic care to get people through a day, to survive through a day. And then we also offer long-term programming with job readiness training, counseling, trauma recovery, to help people move towards out of homelessness and towards permanent housing, a job, and sustainable life beyond our doors. So we have 9 sites across Manhattan and the South Bronx, and our ultimate goal is to walk people through that long-term journey. So right now, we're still doing all parts of that continuum of care, is what we like to call it, but we're really focusing on that first piece, which is just kind of survival, helping people survive. So it's been very difficult in many ways, but very rewarding, especially as the leader of our volunteer services, to just see people coming into the gap, and being willing to help even when things are kind of scary right now.
Mhm. No, yeah, and I think that you, as the leader of the volunteers, you kind of have like that inside look into kind of what's going on, like on the forefront, like with people experiencing homelessness, with your volunteers, like especially in this time where everything looks so different. In your experience, what do you think you would say is the current need right now, whether it is amongst people experiencing homelessness, whether it's amongst your own community?
Yeah, so with our community and with people, really people experiencing homelessness anywhere, those people are facing life-threatening obstacles every day. And so we've been using kind of the phrase like, now more than ever, we need to offer services to help them get through that. So if you can imagine, if you're living in a place like New York City where there's a shelter in place order, but you don't have a home to shelter in, what are you supposed to do? So those needs of a place to sleep at night, a place to shower or clean yourself are always really important, but when there's a pandemic, it's even more important and becomes potentially a life or death situation. And so we've focused on making sure that we can offer those services. It becomes a lot harder when you're trying to social distance and make sure we're not spreading any disease. So I'm sure we'll talk a little about this, but we've adjusted the way we do our services with a focus on continuing to offer those. I will say there are a couple needs that are even more acute than normal, which is hygiene. So we've focused on showers. A lot of places where people can find showers or at least find somewhere to wash their hands or use the restroom are closed, public libraries and things like that. So we've made sure we've added mobile restrooms, mobile showers, and mobile hand washing stations at each of our sites. And then the other need, this may be more unique to New York City, but in the city right now, it's required if you want to go to a grocery store or in any establishment, you need to wear face covering. And so we've been working on providing face coverings to our guests who stay in our shelter before they go out. And that's really just to make sure they have access to needed services. And I think the city's doing a lot to try to provide face coverings as well. So we're coming alongside that effort. And those are very new things. So.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, because I know, so a lot of the charities that I've talked to here in Northern Ireland are really struggling to get personal protective equipment. And like, that's one thing that, we try to help them with their needs and stuff like that. But that's one thing that's like so huge that they've asked us for. And are you guys like struggling to find that, or is the government helping you guys? Like, is that?
It has been a struggle. I would say now it's a little bit more under control than at first. At first we were like, are we going to have a crisis of needing personal protective equipment? And we've had a lot of donations coming in, and then we've also purchased a lot. So I think I had the numbers somewhere. We need, so to continue sustaining for staff, for the people who live in our residences, we need about 20,000 more surgical masks and 300 more N95s. And then we're also looking for like 500 to 1,000 cloth face coverings.
Yeah.
And so all of that is really difficult to source, but we are finding people are either sending donations of masks or sending money to buy masks for us. So we still have a very high need for that, but we are finding that people are kind of coming into the gap and helping.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, it's very high numbers. I got those like last week and I was like 20,000.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was interested in that you have talked about is, and I think, is it Hillary that I was talking to, David and I talked to, she was saying that you guys do like a counseling program. Do you know anything about that, or like what that looks like?
Yeah, I'm assuming she was talking about counseling for our clients, although we do have counseling for staff right now too, since staff are kind of in a very traumatic kind of frontline situation. But our regular counseling program is for our clients. So people who are accessing like the day-to-day services have access to a social worker who can connect them with a clinical counselor or programming. And then those who have joined our long-term residential program, where they're kind of working to build up the skills or deal with whatever it is that's keeping them on the streets, we have clinical counselors on site for those clients. Now that we are sheltering in place, we've implemented new technology to make sure we can offer those counseling sessions in a safe, socially distanced way. So we're doing a lot of those over Zoom. A lot of our social work meetings will provide N95 masks for the social worker and the client, and they'll do it in kind of an open space with space between them, which is interesting because you want to be close when you're counseling. You want to kind of have that, we're in this together, but we're finding we need to make sure that everyone's safe. So that's been an interesting journey, but again, figuring out ways to continue offering that and with adjustments.
Yeah. And I think that I love how you said it's been an interesting journey, because I feel like that's kind of like the statement that everyone's kind of adapting to. It's been interesting. Like we're adapting, we're adjusting, we're figuring out how we can now function like amidst COVID-19. So for you guys at the Bowery Mission, I know that you kind of mentioned this earlier, but how do you feel like you guys are adjusting to COVID-19, or what are some of the differences of tending to your community?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have created, I guess, the New York stay-at-home order started March 13th, and I think a week or two before that, we created a task force, a COVID-19 task force, like many companies have, and I'm on that to represent our volunteer concerns. And I, like you said, it felt like, especially at the beginning, it felt like every day was like, okay, tomorrow's going to be different from yesterday, and we have to change how we're doing everything. So a few ways that we've adjusted is, the biggest thing is meals. So the meals that we're offering to anyone in the community, we are now doing, we used to have people come inside, go through a buffet line, talk to volunteers, sit on round tables. It was very community structured because we believe community is really important to building trust and safety, but that is not okay in COVID-19. So we changed to doing packaging to-go meals and serving them at the door. So we have like plexiglass separating the volunteer from the guests. Although they can see and talk to each other, our volunteers all wear masks. And so we'll like place a meal on the table, step back, the guest will come and take the meal, and then we sanitize the table before the next guest comes. So the whole process takes a lot longer, and we are seeing more people who need meals. And so we've just kind of had to adjust, streamline things, make sure our volunteers are primarily packaging meals rather than like serving from a buffet line. So that's a huge change. We've brought hand washing stations, like I mentioned, so everyone who comes to get a meal has cleaned their hands before they eat. We used to have restrooms inside the building. We purchased portable restrooms to put outside the building so that people and we sanitize those every time someone goes in. Same with showers. We have showers in the building, but we partnered with a local group called Showers of Blessings that has a mobile shower van. So people don't have to come into our building. They can stay in the open air and go in this van and shower. It's very easy to sanitize between guests because it's all like plastics and very clean. So those are the kind of things that thankfully we have a lot of partners who have helped us just change the way that whole process works. And then obviously in our shelters, we have people wearing face coverings if they're around each other. They've adjusted where the beds are to make sure people have some separation and things like that. As well as using technology to have volunteers still meet and tutor with some of our people who are trying to get jobs. So we've adjusted a lot of our volunteering to be remote volunteering, which has been really exciting. And honestly, some things like hand washing stations, like remote volunteering, are things we want to carry on into the future as well.
Yeah.
So looks like we lost someone.
Yeah, I think Miranda jumped off or something. That was weird. Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you that question, and you kind of answered it a little bit. So what's something that you guys have changed that you're actually going to take into the future? We've heard a lot of like charities say, oh, we've started doing this because of COVID-19, but we realized it's actually such a valuable aspect that we can carry into after COVID.
Yeah. There are some things that we are like, this is actually something we'd love to keep doing. The hand washing stations, just kind of finding ways to improve hygiene and cleanliness. That's always been a huge focus, but even being a little like, how can we be more inventive and what can we do that will improve that even more? Even I would say education campaigns around health and hygiene during flu season. We now have these huge posters that show how to wash your hands and how to make sure you're not spreading to other people. And we're going to keep those things. And then for me, as the manager of volunteers, I'm very excited that we've seen so much interest in volunteers doing Zoom calls to work with. We have a lot of volunteers who are mentoring clients or tutoring them to get a GED or teaching workshops. And we've always done that on site because, presence is really important. We're not going to get rid of that, but it really opens up the pool of people you can ask to help if you're willing to do it remotely. And so we've sort of set up our sites to have that technology available now. And that's exciting to think about how we could leverage that in the future going forward.
That's amazing. Yeah, so another thing, this one is kind of like unrelated to COVID, but what's one of the biggest myths about homelessness that you can think of?
Yeah, the one I think of is sort of twofold, and it's just like the profile of a homeless person that we usually, like, if you think of that, what we usually think of is probably really inaccurate. So we often think of homelessness as chronic, so like lifelong, which it rarely is. And we often think of like maybe mental health issues or just like kind of a very specific profile, whereas homelessness can affect every race, gender, age, socioeconomic class. And it's caused by so many different factors. Affordable housing is the top one. Job loss, substance abuse, past trauma, mental health issues, family issues, like all kinds of things can play into someone losing a home. And it might be like one rent check and you're out on the street. And so we always want to encourage people to think about there's not that much separating any of us from someone who's coming through the doors of the Bowery Mission. And often, most often, homelessness is temporary, or to use a clinical term, it's not chronic, it's acute. And so most people just need a helping hand, a couple things to get them back on their feet, back into the job force. A lot of the people we serve have jobs and still can't afford rent. And so there's this population of working people who are experiencing homelessness that most of the public aren't really aware that exists. You hear a lot people like, well, why can't they get a job? And it's like, they have a job and still can't afford rent in New York City. So we really try to emphasize how complex an issue it is, how it can affect everyone. There's no profile of a homeless person, but that it's ultimately something people can overcome. And sometimes it just means you need a couple nights to gather yourself, a couple nights where you can sleep in a safe place and not keep one eye open because you're out and on the street. So, yeah.
That's good. I don't think anybody said that so far. That's really like interesting knowledge for us, I think.
Yeah, it's what I've learned. I think I've worked here 6 years and I've just continued to see like there is no one story or one way that this happens. But it's made me very hopeful because it's really something that most people move out of.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's so interesting because it's just even the last sentence you said was perfectly like aligns with what we're about to ask you. You were like, you've been working here for 6 years and you interact with your clients or people experiencing homelessness, and you know it's hopeful to see kind of just the progress amongst these people. So if you can give us one story of hope, I know there's probably so many, but just a person that's impacted you, or maybe like you impacted them, and just kind of a standout story that, you know, if you were to think of one story of hope, what would you share with people who are watching?
This is kind of recency bias because it's someone I was talking to 2 days ago. But I was sitting upstairs in a public sort of area working, and one of the guys in our program came and sat kind of across the room from me, and we were chatting, and just kind of heard his story. He's came to us to our emergency shelter site. He was living on the street just, I guess, a month ago. And he came to us needing shelter and also saying, I was near someone who tested positive for COVID-19 and I'm really, really scared. And so our social worker met with him. We put him in our isolation space in that shelter so that just in case he wouldn't infect anyone else. And we helped him get to a hospital to get tested, and then had him stay with us and sleep with us until that test report came back. And so one of my coworkers, who's a social worker, sat with him and called the hospital to get the test results, and they came back negative, which was incredible. He was so relieved, as you can imagine. And then from there, he had stayed with us a few nights and had time to meet with that social worker, and she kind of learned his story and learned what his needs were. And now he's moved into our long-term program and is working towards getting a job, is healthy, is like the most outgoing person ever. He was chatting my ear off. And so he is like well on his way towards recovery, no longer homeless, and working towards getting back into his old profession.
Yeah.
So that was just really incredible to hear. I was like, congrats on being COVID negative. And I'm so glad you're here. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
And so for our, the people that are going to be watching this video, is there any way that, even someone from here, from Northern Ireland, or if we have any followers from New York City, then what they can do to get involved and help out and, donate or whatever it is?
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this. The most flexible way to help is to donate financially. So an easy way to do that is for us is to go to bowery.org/donate. If you want to donate directly to our COVID-19 fund, you can go to bowery.org/COVID-19. And that page has all kinds of updates on what we're doing, as well as changing needs. So we keep that posted. And it also will link to a page that says, like, we need face masks and here's how you can get this to us. So I would say financial donations and then awareness. This isn't specific to the Bowery Mission, but we are working really hard to advocate for people who are experiencing homelessness in this time of shelter in place. Wherever you live, finding those organizations that are advocating for the homeless and that are taking care of those who can't shelter in place, that's a huge thing to do. I'm sure everywhere, anyone who's listening to this, anywhere you live, you probably have homeless neighbors. And so finding organizations near you that help, if you're healthy, volunteering, that's incredibly important, and reminding your politicians that this is a group of people that we need to advocate for and are human beings and are worthy of dignity and all the services we can offer. I think that's really important. So we would love to have people help support us in New York City, but there's need everywhere as well.
That's true. That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah, for your time, and then thank you, like, the Bowery Mission for just speaking with us. Because I mean, this is probably gonna cut off the interview, but like more just like directed toward you guys. That you guys are doing such amazing work, and I think that the point of our interviews this month is just to show, like, you guys are frontline workers. You guys are meeting the need, and we're asking our consumers, our customers, our volunteers, just to see how can we support these charities, how can we support to really for what we're passionate about, and that's like the homeless community, and that's just vulnerable people. So thank you so much, like, honestly.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been very encouraging. I have enjoyed this so much, and we feel so supported by people who are actually thinking about this and caring about this. And so thank you for making time for this as well.
Yeah.